In this video, we're going to look at SQL Alchemy one-to-one relationship. So a one-to-one relationship is one that allows us to map one instance of an entity or a table onto another instance. So for example, if you have a parent table, a parent and a child table, then you can associate one parent to only one child. And in this video, I'm going to be demonstrating how we create that with SQL Alchemy. So right here in our code, we have our basic settings. So for example, we have our connection string, which I set up. I used also it to create the engine, which we're going to use while querying for our database objects. I went ahead and created a base class that's going to allow us to create the database tables. So let's go ahead and create the database table. So we're going to have two tables. Let me first model them out. So we shall have a class. So that class is going to be the parent class. So I'll just call it a parent class. Now this parent class is going to have an ID, which is going to be an integer, and it's going to be our primary key in this case. Now we shall also have a name. So let's say the parent is going to have a name, which will be a string in this case. Now we're going to also have a relationship between these two tables, we shall see. So I'm going to come and also create the child class. So the child is also going to have an ID, which is going to be an integer, and it will also be a primary key in this case. Now this child should also have a name, and the name should be a string as well. Now once you have this string, then you're also going to provide a foreign key to the parent table, which is going to be the primary key of the parent table. So in this case, what we shall do is to provide the parent ID. So I'll say we're going to have our parent ID, and this parent ID is going to be an integer, and it will be a foreign key that basically references our parent table. So it's going to be a foreign key to the parent table. So right now we're going to go ahead and do this with SQL Alchemy. So the first thing I'll do is to create a class of parent. So I'll create a class, and this class is going to be our parent class. Now it's going to inherit from our base class, and I'm going to go ahead and the first thing I'll do is actually give it a name. So I'll do this by providing the Danda table name, and once I do that, and I'll specify that this table is actually going to be called parents, and within this table we shall have an ID, which is going to be an integer, and the primary key. So I'll say ID is going to be a column. So it's going to be a column. I don't know if I imported that. Have some inputs right here. We actually imported it from SQL Alchemy. So I'll come and basically say that this is going to be a column. So this column is also going to have a type of integer. And within here, I'm going to come and provide primary key attribute. So this is just a boolean that shows that this is our primary key. And then I'll provide a name. So this name, sorry for that. So our name in this case is going to be a string. So I'll say we're going to have a column, and this column is going to be a string. So we can even specify how long this string is. So for example, if we said 25 characters, then we can give in a nullable constraint. So I can say nullable is going to be called false, meaning that this can't be left now. And once we have this, then we're going to go ahead and provide a simple function that's going to return a string representation of every object we create from this class. So I'll do that with repre, and then I'll provide self, and within this I'll just come and simply return how we want to represent these objects as strings. So we shall have a parent, and then in this case we shall just make use of the parent ID. So I'm going to provide an f string right here, and this f string will simply return a parent and their ID. So shall say self.id. So once we are done with this, I'm going to go ahead and create our child class. So the child class is also going to inherit from base, and within here we shall say base, and then I'll do the same thing. I'll provide the table name, which is going to actually be the name of the table, the child. So we shall just basically call this child, and actually let's call this children. I'm just going to call the table name children, and once we have this, then we shall have an ID. So this ID is going to be a column, which will be an integer, and this integer will also be the primary key of this table. Now once we have this, then we shall also provide a name, which is basically going to be a string. Actually, we have to first make it a column, and then this will be of type string. Now let's say it also is of 5 characters long and shouldn't be null. So we have this, then we can say null label is going to be false. And once we are done with this, then what I can do is also create the primary key that links these two tables. So the primary key we're going to use in this case is going to be the primary key to our parent table. So to do that, I'll just come right here and say the parent ID is going to be equal to a column, and this will be an integer. Now, if you're confused about where these are coming from, I actually imported them right here. So what I'm going to do is to say that this is going to be an integer, and once you have an integer, then I can go ahead and specify what this is actually going to be. So it's going to be a foreign key. So we create an instance of the foreign key class, and then we specify which table this foreign key references. So what we have here is we are going to reference the ID of the parent table. So in this case, I'll say that we're going to have a foreign key, and this foreign key is going to be of parents, since that's our table name. So we're going to have parents dot, and in this case we shall say ID. So right now I'm just going to also come and create a repre method that's going to basically return a string representation of this class. So in this case, I'll also return an f string. I'll just return an f string, and this f string is going to have a child, and then it's going to also have a child ID, which is self.id in this case. So right now we have our tables joined together in a one-to-many relationship. But if we wanted to create a one-to-one relationship, then that means we have to specify a way in which if we are to call a parent, and then list their children, we need to only return one instance. So what you do is what you're going to do in this case is to establish our relationships. So remember the SQLAlchemy relationship of one-to-many, which I covered in the previous video, and I showed how we can come up with relationships, and then we use backpopulates or backref. Now in this video, I'm going to be explaining how to do that for a one-to-one relationship. So to do that, I'll just come and establish this relationship. So what I'll do here is to specify that we're going to have a child, and this child is going to be a relationship to our child table. Then you're going to also specify what it backpopulates to. So in this case, I'll say a relationship, and this takes in the table as a first argument. So we're going to specify which model, and the model is going to be the child model. Then I'm going to come here and say backpopulates. And once you have backpopulates, I'm going to basically state what we're going to backpopulate to. So in this case, we're going to backpopulate to parent. So what this means is we can be able to access the parent and then the child of that parent. So I'll do the same thing for our child table right here, and what I'll do is to say parent is going to be equal to a relationship to our parent class. So the first thing I'll do is to specify that we are going to make use of our parent class in this case, and then I'll come and do the same thing. So I'll say backpopulates, and instead of saying children like how we did for a one-to-many relationship, here we're going to have a child, so I'll say child. Now what happens when you use backpopulates is where we have a one-to-many relationship, just like we have here, we actually want to return only one instance. Now a one-to-many relationship on the side of the parents means that if we say parent.children, in this case it's child, it will return a list or a query set having all the objects that are related to this parent. So if we don't want that to happen, what we do is to actually come and pass an extra argument to our relationship. So I'll say comma, and then you can say use list, and you say equals to false. Now what this does is to go ahead and return only one instance of that child object that is related to this specific parent. So let's go ahead and create a database table. So we're going to make use of our base class that we created here. We shall access the metadata, and then we shall bind it to this engine we created here. So actually, let me just add another extra configuration. So this is actually going to be our echo, and the echo is going to be equal to true. So I'm going to save, and once I do that, then I'll just come right here and create this table with base dot metadata dot create all. So I'll even attach the engine, and this is just enough to basically run and create a database. So to create a database, I'm going to simply go to the terminal, and what I'll do is to run this file. So I'm going to head over to my terminal. I'm in Windows system for Linux. Try to check it out. So I'm just going to come and run Python 3 and then main.py. And this should go ahead and create our database tables. So it's actually, it seems like we have an error in our connection string, so let's check it out. So when I go right here on our connection string is actually supposed to have the database, something I forgot, so I'll just add it right here. So I'll say SQLite, and then I'll just basically concatenate the OS path. So I'll save this, and once I save this, I'll head back to our terminal and run our file once again. And this is going to go ahead and create our database tables. Now, since I specified echo to be true in our create engine function, we now have the SQL generated right here. So we have our parents table as well as our children table, and we also have our foreign key, which basically references the parent ID. So let's try to call an object of our parent. So every time we query for a parent and we try to access the children, instead of listing a list of objects related to that parent, we're going to only return one. So let's actually look at how that happens. So what I'll do is to go back to our code right here. So I'm just going to create a new file, and I'll simply call this file populate. So I'll just call this populate.db. Meaning that's actually it's going to be a .py file. It's going to be a Python file. So this is going to help us to create a parent object and then associate various children onto that object. So what I'll do is to first create a session that's going to allow us to do such things. So I'll just come right here, and what I'll do is to import our session maker class from flask-sqlalchemy.orm. So I'll just come right here and say we're going to import session maker. And this session maker is going to allow us to create session objects. Now, session objects are the ones that will allow us to basically query for our objects and create our objects as well. So I'll just come right here, and once I create that, then I'll just come at the bottom of our code right after here. So I'm just going to comment this out, so we don't have to actually run this file again. So I'll uncomment it. So what I'll do is to actually say session maker. Actually, I'm just going to create a variable called session. Now, this variable called session is actually going to have it's going to be an instance of the session maker class, and into that we shall have to bind it to one engine. So when we create that instance, then we shall bind it to one engine. So this is actually the instance, and I'll come and basically bind it to one engine like this. So I'll say bind is equal to engine. Now, once I do this, then I'm just going to come within our populate.py file, and what I'll do is to say from main, we're going to import our database table. So I'll just come and say import our parent table, actually our parent model. I'm actually going to also import our child model as well as our session. Now, I'm going to go ahead and create an object of our user, or I'll actually create two objects of our user for this example. So I'm just going to come, actually parent, so I'm just going to come and create parent 1, and parent 1 is going to be created with our session. So I'll actually say there's going to be an object of type parent, and then we shall give in the attributes. So the only attribute we have on those tables is a name, which is going to be here. So just like even that, we also have we have the same for the child. So what I'll do is to come right here. So I'll provide the name as parent 1. So I'll also have parent. So this is actually going to be parent 2, and this shall also be a parent with the name of parent 2. So once we have these objects, then we can actually go ahead and use our session to basically create these objects in our database. So to do that, I'll just come and say session dot add all, then I'll create a list containing these objects. So I'll just come right here and say this is going to be a list having our object. So the first object is actually going to be our parent 1, and then we shall have our parent 2. So we're going to have our parent 2. So once we have this, then we basically want to commit this to our database. So what I'll do is to say session dot commit. So I'll just come to our terminal and run this file, and we expect that this is going to go ahead and create these object. So I'll just come to our terminal right here, I'll clear my terminal with Ctrl and L. So I'll say Python 3, and then this will run, we're going to actually run our populate.py. So when I run this, we now see our insert statement. So we see insert into parents values, and then we have the different values of parent 1 as well as parent 2. So once we have this, then we expect that now our child objects have been created. So when you run a query, so I'm just going to come and actually comment this, and I'm going to use our session to basically help us to query for all parent objects. So I'll just come right here and say parents is going to be equal to session dot query, and in this case I'll specify that we're querying for the parent class. So I'll say parent, so this is going to be parent, and then I'll say dot all, meaning that you want to return all objects, so the class parent. So when I save this, I'm going to come and run this. So I'll actually add a print statement right here so that you can see our object. So I'll say print parents. So when I come right here and run our file, so now we have parent 1 and parent 2 in our database. So let's say we create a child object, and let's actually see how we can add child objects. So when I come right here, I'm going to query for parent 1. So parent 1 is actually that parent with ID of 1 because it's the first object we created. So I'm just going to come right here and query for parent 1. So I'm just going to say parent 1 is going to be equal to parent. So I'll say, actually I'm going to use our session. So session dot query. Sorry for this. So this is going to be session dot query, and now we're going to query for a parent. And once you query for a parent, you need to return a parent with a specific ID. So in this case, we shall say dot filter, and then I'm going to basically come right in here and say we need a parent with a certain ID. So shall say parent dot ID, and if the parent dot ID is equal to the ID, in this case which is 1, then we want to return the first object that has that specific ID. So once we have this, then I'm just going to go ahead and print parent 1. So when I come to our terminal and run this, we now get our parent 1 returned to us, which is fine. So when I come right here, what I want to do is to create a child object that specifically added onto this parent or related to this parent. So I'll do is to come right here. So I'm going to create our first child object, child 1, and that will be a child with the name of, let's say, child 1. So I'll just call this child 1, and when I call this child 1, then I'm going to go and specify that the parent of this child. So once we have this relationship right here, I'm just going to come and say child.parent. So I'll just come right here and say that the parent of this child, so we're going to have parent, and the parent is going to be parent 1. So let's say we also have, I'm actually going to create another child object as an example, but before I create it, let me first add this to our database. So I'll do is to say session dot add, and then I'm going to add our child 1, and then actually it's going to be our child 1, and then I'm going to basically commit this to the database. So I'm just going to say session dot commit. So when I print, so in this case I'm going to come and print a parent 1 dot child, and this is supposed to return that child that's basically related to that parent 1. So when I run this, we now have child 1 as the final result returned to us, meaning that our parent only has one child attached to us. So let's actually go ahead and create another child that's going to actually be also related to that parent. So when I come right here, what I'll do is to create another child. So I'm going to comment this out. I'll copy this object. So I'm just going to copy child 1, and then I'm just going to change a few things. So I'll say this is going to be child 2. Now I also have child 2 right here. So if the parent is going to be parent 1, and so let me actually run it to show you guys. So right here we have a child none, meaning that that won't be related to our parent. So let's say we wanted to actually return our child 1. So actually what I'll do is to Actually, since now we want to return parent.child1, but parent1.child, but we haven't actually added this. So let's say we commit this to our database. That's what I actually wanted to show. So when I add this to our session, I'll say session.addchild2 and then session.commit. So when I go ahead and do this, when I run this, right now we see that the child we have is child2. So even if I uncommented this, so for example, let's say we have both of these objects. So actually for the first object was saved to our database successfully, and our second object was also saved to the database successfully. But what we've seen is when we create another object and relate it to that parent, it means that that child will be the only object that is related to that parent as a child. Now this shows you that each time we have a one-to-many relationship, one-to-one relationship, instead of returning a list of related objects, we're returning one object related to that specific parent. Now we're going to look at how we configure delete behavior for such objects. To configure delete behavior, I'm going to add some extra arguments to our relationships as well as our foreign key. So the first thing I'm going to do is to come to our relationship of child on our parent model, and what I'll do is to add one extra argument. So that argument is going to be the cascade argument. Now within the cascade argument, I'm just simply going to say all and then delete. So this means that every time we delete a parent object, we're going to be deleting the child object that's actually related to this object. Now to make it also happen on the child side, what I'm going to do is to come to the foreign key, which represents the parent ID. What I'll do is to add one extra argument to our foreign key, and this is going to be on delete, and then we shall just say it's going to be cascade. So when I save this, I'm going to try to delete our related object. So what I'll do is to come and create a simple file right here. So I'm just going to come and create a simple file. So this file is actually going to be delete.py, and then within the delete.py, I'm going to import all the things that we need. So the first thing I'm going to do is to specify our module, which is main, and then import our parent class. We're also going to import our child class as well as our session object. I'm just going to come right here. The first thing I'm going to do is to print out. Actually, I'm going to go and change a little things. So I go to our main.py, and then I'll remove, for now I'm going to remove the echo statement so that we don't have all the SQL. And then what I'll do is to first print our, so what I'm going to do is to first print our list of our users. I'm going to just come right here. I'll use an F string. And then within here, I'm just going to say, we're going to print our parent object. So I'll say parents. And then here we're going to actually just return a list of parents. So I'm just going to say session.query, and then right in here I'll just say filter. So actually we're not going to filter, but we're going to return all objects. So in this case I'll say we're going to return parent and then dot all. So this is going to print all our parents. So I'll also do the same thing for children. So what I'll do is to say print children. In this case, I'll say print children, and this will also return our children. So I'll say session dot query, and then within here, I'll say that we're going to return our child, and then all objects related to the child class. So I'll say dot all. So once I do this, what will happen is actually I have an error here. So when I remove that, when I run this file, what we actually have is this. So when I go back to our terminal right here, I'm going to run python3 and then delete.py, and now we have parents and then the list of parents as well as the list of children. Now let's get that parent as related to a child. So let's say we go right here. Now what I'll do is actually print, let's say we want to actually I'll hide this within a variable. So I'll say parent to delete. So I'll say it's going to be the parent object we're going to delete in this case. So I'll say parent to delete, and this is going to be equal to session dot query, and then within here I'm going to specify that we want parent object. So in this case I'm going to say parent, and then we're going to have parent, then I'll say dot. So in this case what I'll do is to say that we're going to filter for a parent with a certain ID. So I'll say filter, and then here I'll say parent, dot id is equal to 1, which means we are getting parent 1. So I'll also have to specify dot first, since we're going to return only one object, or the first object. And after doing this, I'll just come right here and print parent 1. So I'll just come and say, actually just print parent 1. And what this will do, actually this is parent to delete, sorry for this. So this is going to be parent to delete. So when I print this, then we expect that it's going to return parent 1. So if I come right here and run this file again, we now see that we are returning parent 1. Now let's say I wanted to return parent to delete.child. So I'll say print parent to delete.child. Now what we want to do is to delete. So when I come and actually first run this, we now see that this parent is related to child 2. Now what if we wanted to actually go ahead and delete the parent and then be able to print out our list of parents? So I'll do is actually make this print statement go down this side, and I'll remove the child for now. So one thing I'm going to do is to come and use our session to delete this object. So I'll say session dot delete our parent to delete, and then I'll finally commit this to our database. So I'll say session dot commit. And once I do this, then I'm going to come down this side, and what I'll do is to run python3 delete.py. Now we now see that we are actually remaining with parent 2 and child 1, and these are not even related. So that means that we have had our parent 1 deleted, as well as our child 1, which was related to the parent that we had. In this video, we looked at how to configure a one-to-one relationship between two models in SQLAlchemy. If you've enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing to the channel, commenting, and sharing this video to anyone it may help. Thank you for watching, guys, and see you in the next video. Bye.